people, this comment right here, when I seen this, I said, it sent me. It really did. This is why in New Orleans, I try not to make eye contact. It's people walking around knowing they've passed away but have physical bodies. When I tell y'all, whoever wrote this, they're not lying. They're not lying at all. Let me tell you, when the first time that I went to New Orleans, what I noticed. So the first thing that we did was went to Marie Laveau's grave to do the tour. There was a young lady there. My husband actually pointed this young lady out. I don't know what made him point her out, but he did. Didn't think nothing about it. Now, mind you, when I went to Marie Laveau's grave, and this is before me and Marie Laveau got close, when I went to the tour, I couldn't stay in there. I was probably in there for 5 minutes before I felt like I was going to pass out. I had to leave out. We stayed, I think, 3 days. That was our first day. The woman that my husband pointed out, we saw her at least 5 more times in different locations that weren't in close proximity to each other. I saw her, my husband saw her, my 3 kids that was with me saw her. We saw her at a restaurant that wasn't near New Orleans. It was in the outskirts. And the other times we saw her walking different streets, Bourbon streets, the French Quarter, just different streets, at least 5 times. I knew something was up. So I'm here to tell you that comment, very true.
So I completely forgot this happened to me, but when I was about 7, I got locked in my Baptist church bathroom. Now, this was my grandfather's church, so it's a whole lot of, let me get into. Now, I'm from Louisiana, and I'm not gonna lie, if your family is very religious, 9 times out of 10, the house is gonna be haunted, and that's just, I don't know why, but it's like, most of our grandparents' houses is haunted. So with that being said, like, we had a lot of experiences when we were children. I had a lot of young children in my family, so we all used to always stay at my grandparents' house, and we all have a story in itself about the house. But keep in mind, this happened at the church. Now, we used to go to a church that was almost 2 hours away. Yes, my grandpa owned the church, and it was really just like a family church. It was the same people that lived in the neighborhood that went to the church. It was only like maybe like 10 members, if that. And this was a huge church. So with that being said, 10 people in a huge church, we rarely ever wanted to go anywhere by ourselves, but we had to go to the bathroom. This bathroom always terrified me. Why? Because you had to walk through 2 doors, and it was a long, old-fashioned hallway with no windows, just pictures on the walls and angels everywhere. So this particular time, I did not want to go to the bathroom. I don't know why. On the way there, I drank so much, but soon as service started, you know they're playing instruments, I had to go to the bathroom. So I get up, and I'm walking to the restroom. I go through the double doors. I have this eerie feeling the whole time that I'm walking down this hallway to get to the bathroom. And keep in mind, I'm the only one back here because it's only like 15 people there, maybe. So nobody else had to go to the bathroom when church just started. So I'm walking through all of this by myself, and I'm already feeling like very, very uncomfortable. So I go into the restroom. I'm doing my, my dues. I'm washing my hand. Now, keep in mind, the restroom door did not ever close it didn't close like it was supposed to. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but yes, the door never closed like it was supposed to. With that being said, the door barely locked, okay? Now, yes, this was a very, very old church. Don't get me wrong, but this had never happened before. Literally, the door was so old that it didn't even secure all the way. So for it to be jammed like that, it didn't make sense to me. Now, what I didn't tell you guys was this restroom had 2 stalls. Why did one of the stalls door start to move open? Yeah, it was an old-fashioned one. You know, the ones that make the noise when they move because it has like the metal wire it started to move. And I hollered to the point where someone came and got that goddamn door open. Not only After that, did I not go to the bathroom anymore? I didn't even drink anything on the way to church. I was thirsty, and Baptist service is a long service. I would not drink anything the whole service to not go to that bathroom. But the scariest part about it all, after that incident, the lights blunk every time a child went to the bathroom.
So I had a mimic encounter this morning, which is the reason why I'm telling the story outside and not in there. So this morning at about 4 a.m., my husband was getting ready to leave for work. Typically, right before he leaves, he'll go into the bedroom, he'll give me a hug, he'll give me a kiss, and that's my way of knowing that he's leaving. I heard when he disarmed the alarm, when he got in his car, he has a really loud truck. I heard when he turned it on, and I heard when he drove off. At about 6 a.m., I see him walking back into the bedroom. My first thought was that he must have forgotten something. He does work about an hour away, so I figured he probably got all the way to work and realized he forgot something and had to drive all the way back. I see when he walks into the bedroom, and right next to where I'm laying down, like there's like a side table, we had a bag with like a bunch of snacks, protein bars, etc. He goes over there, he starts going through the bag, but he's being like extremely loud about it, like just fumbling, and I hear all the crickling of all the wrappers and stuff. So I kind of look in his direction and say, just take the whole bag, like just take the whole bag with you. He then turns around, walks over to me, gets this close to my face. Mind you, the room is still pretty dark. He gets this close to my face, kisses me, gives me like a really tight hug, and as he's like moving away, he just disappears, like in a flicker, like a flash. He's just gone. I'm there kind of looking around like, what just happened? Like he was literally just here. And I look down and I see the bag of snacks that were on the table are now on my lap. So I didn't dream it. I didn't imagine it. Like something literally moved that object from that table to me, came to me, and then disappeared. Needless to say, I will be cleansing the house. And I did go back to sleep after that because I don't let things like that really like bother me. I did pray and pretty much let it know that it wasn't welcome there. But this thing was 100% a mimic.
I once found out the person I was dating was a bloodline witch, meaning they don't practice magic, but they descend from people who do. I actually thought it was kind of cool, but I was surprised the night they first slept over when they asked if I kept a bowl under the bed. That being a protection work, I wasn't sure if I should answer honestly. They also asked if I was sure about sleeping in my evil eye. Days later my phlegm turned red, but to my doctor's nice surprise.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about them?
So it's two parts to this story. The first part, me and my family, we went to Florida last year for Christmas, and we were staying in like, you know, like one of those rental Airbnb, Verbo, whatever those places are, whatever, right? We get there. Now, the way the house is laid out, it was 3 bedrooms in the front part of the house. Then when you walk down the little hallway, it was the dining room, the living room, and the kitchen, all one, you know, space. And then it was like a door that went to a bigger bedroom, like the master bedroom. And then there was the pool, you know, on the outside of the kitchen and the master bedroom. So we're all like chilling in the living room. This is the first night we get there. We all chilling in the living room or whatnot. And I'm sitting on the ottoman, which is like, I'm like sitting this way with my back, my left side of my back towards my mom's door, because my mom was staying in the master bedroom. And I'm like on the ottoman this way. My aunt is sitting on the right of me on the regular part of the couch. And then my 2 cousins were sitting on the other end of the couch. So while we're sitting there, we're talking, watching TV, I thought my mom came out the room. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, I saw her walk like from the left side of me coming out the door and walk past me, but then I didn't see her no more after that. So I was like, where did my mom go? And my aunt was like, your mom in the room. I'm like, I swore she just came out of the room. So everybody looking at me like I'm crazy at this point, right? So I'm like, all right, I swear my mom came out of the room. It looked like my mom walked by me and then walked past me. My mom comes out of the room like less than like 2 minutes after that. And I'm like, yo, I thought you came out of the room. And she was like, no, I was in the bathroom. Because the bathroom she had a bathroom in her own room or whatever, right? So, second part, like I noticed the next morning when I woke up that my light was on. I thought somebody had came in and turned the light on or checking over. I don't know, whatever it was, my light was on when I woke up. So I'm like, all right, whatever. The next night, I'm asleep and I go to roll over and my light is on again. But then as the light was on, it turned itself off. But then it turned itself back on again. So I'm like, yo, what is going on? So I'm thinking it's like somebody playing, like maybe it's a light switch in the bathroom, whatever. It wasn't. The only light switch that would turn the light on in the bathroom was in the bedrooms. So somebody could be in the bedroom, because me and my aunt and my cousin had like a Jack and Jill room. So I got proof of this. Like, I literally have the video where I'm like waving my hand over. I'm holding the phone, waving my hand over, so that you see I'm not messing with the lights. And nobody was in the room with me. It was creepy, but I'll post the proof if y'all want it. But that definitely was like the creepiest thing that has happened, especially recently. Like, really, really creepy.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
So I don't know how crazy or unbelievable my story is, but it really happened, so I'm just going to tell it. Back in 2004, I was stationed in Ramadi, Iraq with the 2nd Battalion, 11th Marine Regiment, which was an artillery unit based out of Camp Pendleton, California. During our time there, we served as convoy security from Ramadi all the way to Baghdad for various convoys. That was our mission while we were out there. The base we were sent to was called Junction City. This was an Army, Marine, Navy compound that was across the river from the city of Ramadi. And the base we're on was a prior Iraqi police compound that we had taken over. So it was a pretty big base, you know, several miles around the outside, you know, high razor wire fences, outpost, artillery to respond to incoming fire, things like that. But several thousand troops stationed there. And so this was, again, 2004. And if you remember 2004, the Iraq War was very hostile. It was a very big year for combat. April of that year, there was a big battle in the city of Ramadi. And then in December of that year, Operation Phantom Fury is when we took the city of Fallujah itself. And that was during the time period I was there in Iraq. So just to give some background of when I was there. So to get to my story, back then when you wanted to call home, and I don't know what the protocols are now or how things go now, but when you wanted to call home, you had to go to a phone center. These were typically rooms that had about 20 phones in them that people would sign their name and wait in line. Typically, each phone call was allowed 15 minutes. So when someone came out, they'd call the next name on the list and they'd say, hey, so-and-so, you're up. And you'd go in there and you'd punch in a calling card number that you had prepaid minutes, and then you'd call home. And you'd have 15 minutes to call as many people as you could or just stay on the phone calling home, right? So I had made a routine that at 2 a.m. I would go and make my phone calls, because 2 a.m. Iraq time was like 5 p.m. back home, something like that, you know, but nighttime there was daytime here, you know, type of thing. So I wasn't waking anybody up. And also the base, everyone was sleeping at night. So those phone centers were much less busy because nobody was trying to wake up at 2 a.m. to call home more often than not. So I had a 1-year-old son at the time, and I just wanted him to hear my voice. You know, you just never knew when your last day could be out there. So I wanted to call as often as I could, you know, just to give peace of mind to my family that everything was okay, even if it was for a 1-minute phone call. And so I'd have my alarm set for 2 a.m. every day. And at 2 a.m. I'd wake up, I'd grab my rifle, sling it over my shoulder, and begin my walk a couple hundred yards to this Army phone center to call home. And so to make this walk, you'd have to walk across this open field. You know, there was some grass, but there was no obstructions in this field. It was an open field, desert type of environment. But other than that, there was nothing across these fields, just a worn out path from hundreds of Marines and soldiers, you know, walking back and forth between the barracks and the phone centers. And obviously, you know, you're in a time of war. You're not walking with flashlights or things like that. And the only light there was the moonlight, which in the desert was more than enough. It's plenty bright. It always seemed like it was a full moon, never a cloud in the sky. So I'm making my walk. I'm making my walk across this couple hundred yard journey from my barracks to the phone center, and I'm looking at the ground. Not paying attention, just kind of looking at my next step, looking at my feet, staring at the ground, just thinking about who I'm going to call, or, things like that. Well, about halfway there, I run into somebody, like physically shoulder to shoulder, and I get knocked back. I get hit shoulder to shoulder, and I say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I'm immediately feeling like, oh my God, who did I just run into? I'm an idiot. I'm staring at the ground. And I reach for this person's like uniform to grab something to keep them from falling. But there's nobody there. And I'm looking, and there's just no one there. And so I freeze with my arms up, like grabbing, and I'm listening for like somebody rolling in the grass or somebody stumbling, but there's nobody there. And I sit there for another 10-15 seconds. I even say hello, and there's no one there. And so I don't spend a whole lot of time, because now I'm kind of like embarrassed. I'm like, I wonder if somebody is watching me like talk to myself in this open field. So I just continue walking. So I walk another 100 yards or so, and I get to the phone center. And when I get there, the door is padlocked, and there's a sign on the door that says, this phone center is out of service until further notice. So for those who were out there, who were deployed, or for those who don't know, when that happened, it was typically because there were casualties on the base that particular day, or the day prior, or recently. And they shut the phone centers down as a way to make sure the news of the fallen soldiers or the Marines doesn't get back to the next of kin before they could do it properly. And so it was a common thing in 2004. It seemed like every other week the phones were down 3, 4, 5 days at a time, which, isn't a big deal if you're considering the alternative to being one of those casualties. And you completely respected those families, and your phone call, minor inconvenience, but your heart would always be with those families who were getting that news about their loved ones. So the phone center was closed, which it often was. And so I'm walking back, mild inconvenience that I wasn't able to make my phone call, but I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what if the person I ran into, the spirit that I ran into, was a soldier, Marine, sailor, who was going through their routine still of calling home, and they didn't realize that they had passed. And that's who I bumped into that day, or that night, on my way to make my phone call. And I've never forgotten that. And sometimes it gives me chills thinking about. I never pinpointed the day. I never pinpointed who the casualty might have been. But that's what happened to me, and it was very real, and it happened. So there's my story.
The creepiest paranormal thing happened to me last night. I was dead. Well, it was two things, actually. The first was this dark shadow in the corner. I was trying to sleep. Dark shadow dude in the corner kept reappearing, disappearing. I was annoyed, and I think it finally got annoyed, because at one point it seemed like the thing was twerking in the corner, and I almost laughed at it. And I was just like, whatever, I'm going back to sleep. I don't got time for this stuff, because I see stuff all the time, and most of the time I ignore it. So this was one of the moments, like, I was really tired and I didn't want to be bothered. But why are you a shadow in the corner twerking anyway? That's beside the point. But what scared the bejesus out of me is, like, I finally fall off into a deep sleep, and I have insomnia real bad, so I try my best to get, when I can get some sleep, I try my best to get in it and stay in it, and I don't care. I don't let nothing wake me up. But I wake up and I look over to the left of my bed, and it was like this white face over there, but you can almost see through it. It was the crazy thing, because my son, he's 16. The day before, he had asked me, did have I seen a white face? And I'm like, no, you know, I see a lot of stuff, but I haven't seen that. And he told me he went to the bathroom because their rooms are across the hall. He went to the bathroom and he said he was holed up in the bathroom because he seen this white face in the bathroom, but he was like, finally he's tired, so he wants to go to bed. So he was like skipping. He came out in the hallway and he seen the white face himself, but he was like, when he looked at it and tried to give a long hard look at it, it faded away. And that was kind of the experience that I had. It was just there, and like, but you could almost see through, but it was just a face. Like, it didn't have a body. It was just literally just a floating face. No, I can't even say it was a whole head or anything. It was a freaking face, a face. And it was just there, but it scared the mess out of me. Like, so I screamed, of course, I woke my husband up, whatever, but then I ended up falling right back to sleep. I don't know how the heck do I do that. Like, I'd be in straight terror mode, like horrified because the stuff is there. And then I realized, oh, it's just a spirit, and I'll fall right back to sleep sometimes. So that's what happened. But have any of y'all sat there and seen these just weird faces floating around? You know, I don't know what's up with this paranormal stuff. It's just been more and more activity for me lately, but that is the paranormal of the day.
Story time. So after graduating college as a millennial, there were no jobs. So you had to figure out ways to make money. And I became a certified nursing assistant. So I had to work 12-hour shifts, and sometimes I worked in a nursing home. Sometimes I worked in a hospice facility. And in that hospice facility were a bunch of rich old white people dying. Typically, if you were there, you were ready to go ahead and meet your maker. And every time I would make my rounds to take care of dying patients and bathe them, every time I'd enter the room, especially those who were in pain, suffering, there would be an apology. This lady would end up crying and saying how the black people who she used to torment are coming to her in her dreams and haunting her. So she would apologize for me as if she was doing some kind of atonement for me. I do believe that our ancestors haunt racists on their deathbed and torment them.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
All right, so I want to hop on this trend, and I just want to say that this story is not my story; it's my father's story. And mind you, my father is not even big on paranormal stuff at all. So he said that, so basically he was with one of his longtime friends. And this happened in their, I would say, late 40s, early 50s. So one of his friend's father had passed away. And, so basically he said that he had went to go visit his friend. Now, mind you, his friend lived with his father in the house. It was like a 3-story house. So a few months go by after his father has passed away. So my father goes there and, you know, just to go visit, see how he's doing. And he said that they're talking downstairs on the first floor in the living room. Now, mind you, they're just talking about the father, reminiscing and stuff. So, also, I do want to point out the father, he is a guitarist. Like, he plays the guitar. He was a musician. So this is just one of the key points in the story. So he said that they're reminiscing, they're chopping it up about the old times and you know, his father. And then all of a sudden, his friend goes, "Shh. You hear that?" And my father was just like, they could have sworn that they heard the dad's guitar playing on the second floor in one of the rooms. All right, so when they got quiet, they didn't hear anything. So they continued to talk because they brushed it off. They were just like, whatever. So they continued to chop it up and whatever. And then all of a sudden they hear it again. And this time they hear it like clearly. So my father's friend was like, no, let me go, you know, see what's going on. Like, so they go up to the second floor, and then as they're getting closer to the room where they kept his father's stuff, the guitar playing gets louder and louder. So when they got to the door and the friend like opens the door, and then the guitar playing completely stops. It was just like dead silence. So they both look at each other like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden, like he said that they heard somebody. It sounded like somebody was running back and forth on the third floor. So my father's friend was like, I think somebody broke in my house or something like that. And my father was just like, nah, I don't think that's anybody breaking in your house. So they end up checking on the third floor to see if this, you know, if there was anybody there or whatever, or somebody broke in. And there was nobody on the third floor. There was nobody in the house. So after that, immediately my father left right after that, because that freaked him out. And he was just like, he don't believe in the paranormal. So that was just like a weird experience to him. But yeah, he said that was his last time visiting him at that house because he was like so freaked out. But yeah, that's my little ghost story. It's not really scary. It's more so like, I don't know, if you want to call it scary you can, but I found that, I don't know, I think that was really like, I mean, that would freak me out too.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So as I've said before in other story times, growing up with a psychic mother and a psychic grandma who have a long line of psychics in their family, ghosts in the spirit world is just second nature for me. And this story isn't really scary, but however, it's supernatural. My mom's been psychic since around the ages of like 12, 13, 14, and she had her first vision where she saw her grandmother fall down the stairs, and her grandmother lived in the next state. Long story short, in under 24 hours, it ended up coming full circle. And it was then my grandma revealed to my mom that there's a long line of psychics in our family that go beyond the plantation. And my grandma always made a point to let us know it can be a gift and a curse. Pretty much saying, to whom much is given, much is required. And for their gifts, when they come, they come. It's not like the Long Island medium for them. So the year is 2004. I'm up at the kitchen table. It's a weekday. I don't know why I'm not in school, but I wasn't. My aunt was in a living room because when I was growing up, it was my mom, my grandma, and my two aunts. We all lived together. So my aunt was in a living room watching General Hospital because she loved her soap operas, even though I hated it because I could never watch my PBS Kids show. And General Hospital, I think, used to come around too. My mom's in her bedroom because she's like one of those people, she stays in her room. So my mom's door flings open and she comes out looking like she's in a cold sweat having a panic attack, and she tells us she just had a premonition. Now, something's odd because she ain't never acted like this. And within the premonition, she saw herself and her siblings at a funeral, and there was only 8 of them when there's 9 of them all together. And they all had on funeral attire, but oddly enough, she couldn't see any faces because they all had like these dark veils on. And any funeral in my family, we've never wore dark veils at all. And to the side of all of her siblings, she saw a short, older lady hunched over, which was my grandma. So my aunt, who's in the living room watching General Hospital, I'll never forget it, she walked up to her and she said, "It wasn't me, was it?" And my mom says, "I don't know. I couldn't see any faces. So it could be any one of us. It could be me for all she knew," like herself. And since my mom didn't see any faces because she couldn't put a name on it, so she starts telling all her siblings what she saw, and they thought it was their estranged brother who left the family 20 years ago. I never even met him, and they used to tell me story how he used to be into the occult. For the lack of a better example, he was our family's Bruno from Disney's Encanto. So my mom reveals the premonition to people in the family, and they just go on living because at the end of the day, you can't stop the inevitable. Mom had the vision in 2004. In 2005, this summer around August, the aunt who acts is up making coffee one morning and she drops to the ground. She passes out in the kitchen in the early mornings. They take her to the hospital. Long story short, we find out she gets diagnosed with brain and lung cancer. And then it's a year later, so now it's 2006. I'm in 5th grade now. She passes away. And I feel like the reason why this story has always stuck out to me, because observing it now from an adult perspective, I noticed when my mom told all her other sisters, because you know, when black people get together, your aunts, the gossip sessions never end. Nobody asked if it was them. They were just like, okay, like just preparing themselves, because like I said, you can't beat the inevitable. However, the one person it was asked my mom and she couldn't confirm it. And when I got to her funeral and I was looking at her body, I just kept on recalling that afternoon where I'm sitting up at the table, my mom had the vision, my aunt asked if it was her, and it was. And it was at that young age where I finally realized what my grandma meant when she said this can be a gift and a curse, and it can be heavy to carry.
What's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life, and why you still think about that moment?
If y'all been following me for a while, y'all know I've had a lot of like spooky, magical experiences growing up. And opposed to a lot of the other stuff I've seen, this one is kind of like PG. So growing up, I was raised by my 2 aunties, my grandmother, and my mother. And we all lived in the same house. One key thing I remember growing up was my grandmother's brother, because she only had one brother, would always come up to visit her at least once a month. And they were getting up there. They were old, because by the time I was born, my grandma was already in her 60s. Remember also, I've told you on other story times that my grandmother was psychic, because there's a psychic line that runs in my family. Oh, and also side note, what you believe in is what you believe in. And I can vividly remember sometime when my grandmother would be sitting with her brother and they would just be chopping it up, talking and gossip. My grandmother was so intuitive. She could literally tell you the stuff that you did in your day before you got to her house. And she would be accurate. My grandmother was so good. There's a common story that always goes through the family of my grandma was so psychic and intuitive that she would always tell my grandpa when he was cheating. And not like on some women intuition shit, because it could have been that. Like she would always tell him, like when he would take the train to like Chicago and do his dirt, she would tell him the stuff he did, the place, the person, the woman's backstory, the shit they said in conversation or pillow talk, if you know what I mean. And it would freak my grandpa out to the point where he would be calling my grandma a witch, even though that never stopped him. So occasionally in conversation when my grandma would be talking to her brother in their old age, she would tell him the things he did before he got to the house that day. And you know how them old school black men, they be like, I'll tell you this much, you ain't nothing more than a witch. But he say it playfully. You know how siblings are, especially siblings from like the 30s and the 40s. So moving forward, it's 2000. He gets sick. He's on his deathbed. My grandmother and my two aunties, they all travel down to Illinois to be by his side. Sadly, we know he's going to pass away, but now we're just like, when? So me and my mom stay back at the house waiting to get the call. And me and my mom are watching this TV in the living room. And my grandmother has around her house, she always had religious relics, statues, little figurines, pictures on the wall. And a key thing she had was 3 dove figurines that she could hang on the wall. And they were right next to that footprints in the sand religious picture where, you know, the one where they're like, when you didn't see footprints, it's when I carried you, that shit. And when I tell you those 3 doves were on a wall since I was born, because you know how sometimes in those old school black elders' houses, they'll have shit sitting there for decades and they'll just have a layer of dust on. But you know better than to touch it because they'll slap your lips off if you do. So anyway, me and my mom are watching TV and we hear something fall off the wall in the dining room. We get up to go see and we see that one of the doves fall. So instead of 3, there's 2 now. A second later, the phone rings. My mom goes to answer it and it's my mom's sister telling them that their uncle died, my grandma's brother. My mom pulls out the couch and she sends me behind the couch that had a lot of shit behind it to go look for it. We don't see anything. It disappears. It didn't break. It didn't shatter. It just vanishes. We tell my grandma, she's all nonchalant about it because, you know, she supernatural down. She's like, oh, it's good to know he made it to the other side. And to this day, we never were able to find that dove. It fell off the wall and vanished.